What happens when you take one of the most beloved franchises of all time and try to give it a new spin? To all new viewers, hi, I'm Belle and I'm a mess from hell, and my sweet berries, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about why Breath of the Wild, quite ironically, felt like a breath of fresh air, and why Tears of the Kingdom falls flat on its stupid face. Grab yourself some popcorn because we're getting right into it.
Link, finally you wake.
If you're watching this video, that means you've probably at least heard of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and are either planning to buy it or you've played the games. If, like me, you have played the games, then you'll know very, very well that there are both pros and cons to being a Zelda player.
I am relieved to see you escape death.
If you've been following the game for longer than the open world editions, then you'll also realise what Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild respectively did right and wrong in comparison to the previous releases. Today I'm going to be simply focusing on why Breath of the Wild worked and Tears of the Kingdom didn't. Now, of course, there are going to be conflicting opinions. Please keep in mind, this is my opinion mixed in with people's other opinions that I've heard, and that this is in no way an insult to people who actually enjoy Tears of the Kingdom, or Breath of the Wild, or whatever you enjoy more. So, I'm presenting it as an objective stance in relation to my subjective opinion. That's all I'm going to say. So, let's start with Breath of the Wild. You've had Zelda game on Zelda game on Zelda game that follow the same format. We know them, we love them, and there's nothing wrong with it. They played it safe, and when they try and explore more, everyone's very happy about it because it's something new and exciting that they have obviously had planned for a while, and it's wonderful to see such an old franchise branching out and trying to appeal to new audiences. However, when you first play Breath of the Wild, you'll know how euphoric it feels to not have to just go from dungeon to dungeon and do whatever you want in the order that you want it. And it's wonderful. It's new, it's inventive, yet it doesn't feel too distant from the franchise we love. However, there are issues, and that is undeniable. Issues that we all thought would be fixed in Tears of the Kingdom. Interestingly enough, the unhappiness with Breath of the Wild, at least that I saw, has actually risen since Tears of the Kingdom. Why, you might ask? Well, it's quite simple. If you have a game and you promise a sequel but don't resolve any flipping issues, you end up with this, and some very unhappy and opinionated players. Now, I'm not saying that by any means Tears of the Kingdom is a bad game in and of itself. Sure, every game has flaws, and that's fine. The issue I have with it is it feels like a quick cash grab and an exploitation of Zelda fans who have been following along for years, and people who were especially waiting for this very hyped up version and sequel of Breath of the Wild. People were expecting something because you gave them that expectation, yet you did not at all follow through on what you promised to give them. The thing that upsets me most personally is the erasure of all our progress in Breath of the Wild. Take the fact that in Breath of the Wild we were this nobody, and we branched up, we grew back into the person we were before. We discovered along with Link who he was. And so, even if you hadn't played Zelda before, the starting point of that game felt like a whole new story, because they claimed it to be a new story, and in no way did they explicitly state it was a sequel to something else. Tears of the Kingdom, on the other hand, that's another story entirely. The problem I have with it, like I said, is the erasure. But what do I mean by that? Let's dig deeper. With Tears of the Kingdom, the fans had quite a few expectations, but the main ones were simple. They want to see what life after the calamity can be like. They want to see how maybe Link and Zelda will go about terminating the 100 and 1,000 year cycle of a hero and a princess having to be chosen to stop this demon from uprising. And there could have been so much work done on Ganon, and instead we got this. This is something I hate, and I'm going to say hate, like hate. It's the fact that they took our progress with Ganon and they're like, oh yeah, but by the way, there's this new civilization, this new people, this new problem that everyone knew about, but we conveniently, ignored it. Because, hey, it wasn't a threat, but now that the other threat has gone, we're just going to decide to now mention this new threat to the only people who could potentially handle this new threat, and apparently one of the people that could handle this new threat knew. And supposedly, Zelda didn't know, but at the same time she knew, but at the same time, Link knew, but at the same time he didn't. And another issue with Tears of the Kingdom is how stupid everyone and everything is. You'd expect them after the Calamity Ganon to at least become a bit more self-aware to what the state of the world could be after it nearly ended. But no. It was really, really fun to see Pura back in her original state, her 20-year-old state, the one that we supposedly knew. We could have gone into more of Link in this universe's backstory, because, again, it's branded as a sequel to something that was before, so all the open-ended questions will have answers, is what people thought. In reality, it was a soft reboot. Not very soft, though. You have to discover little traces of whether the Breath of the Wild story is still canon in TOTK by doing side quests. For example, finding the legend that apparently nobody had even been teaching children about in school. Everyone was like, yeah, whatever. It's not like we all nearly died and the entire world almost got destroyed. No, let's just pretend it never happened. And that's one of the many criticisms. The other is how people expected it to solve a lot of problems, especially with the mechanics and stuff. Instead of solving it though, they used the exact same stuff. And, they reused it and everything. And it would have been fine if it meant, like, the game came out quicker. Skip forward to 6 years later with basically Breath of the Wild 2.0 with nothing new. To be honest, I do have to say that after playing it for a while, I started to think, oh, this is better than Breath of the Wild. And then I looked back and I realised, no, it is not. I look back and I see how excited I was to play Breath of the Wild, how it felt like a treat. Tears of the Kingdom, on the other hand, felt like a responsibility. It felt like we were racing against nothing to end it. We weren't going slowly. Everyone was trying to, figure out what to do. Everyone was so focused on getting to the end that when we reached the end, the biggest problem that we had in Breath of the Wild wasn't even solved. The ending. The ending. We all know how it works. We go to defeat the final boss, have a 2-second cutscene, and then back to the entrance of the boss room. All our efforts in vain, erased, and nothing more is done about it. In Tears of the Kingdom, fans were hoping for a chance to see what happened after Ganon before we get sent back to the beginning. After, you know, when Zelda says, I have to visit Mipha's father, we have to give him the news, and like exploring the regions, rebuilding Hyrule, seeing how Zelda's gonna come into her new position as queen, which, spoiler alert, she never did, because the system, apparently, the societal system is never explained. The Sheikah get destroyed, basically. Like, they're like, oh, the Sheikah are such important civilizations. They use this new technology known as rubber. Yes, that's actually a thing in Breath of the Wild. I don't understand it either. But then you get to Tears of the Kingdom, and apparently the Zonai are older than the Sheikah, have more technology than the Sheikah, and do everything better than the Sheikah. And it makes me wonder, what happens after Tears of the Kingdom? Like, say there was a third game, what would really happen? Would you just have, oh, yeah, there's a third civilization from before the Big Bang, when the dinosaurs were still alive. That makes complete sense. Yes, because goat-faced elves make more sense than that, don't they? Not to even get started on the time travel business, okay? I'm typically quite good with timey-wimey stuff. Why, you might ask? Extended Doctor Who knowledge, okay? That's my qualification. But timey-wimey stuff in games is so fun, usually. Like, you realise that the loops back in time usually present themselves as like a continuous development. So you go for the first loop, you solve something minor, you go to the second loop, you solve something a bit more major, until you get to the loop that we're presented with, that we do as part of, like, the final product of all the previous loops to resolve to get us to the point of finally getting it done. The issue with Zelda going back in time is that she could have prevented many things, like, for example, Calamity Ganon, right? We could have seen if the Sheikah were so ancient and were there since the Calamity, then what were the Zonai doing? They were obviously around before that, and if Zelda was in the past, she could have seen how the Calamity came about, what we could do to destroy it, what we could do to resolve the issue and to prevent the destruction of Hyrule, and for every one of the champions to still be alive. Instead, the champions are replaced with sages. Oh, the sages. The phantoms that follow you around doing nothing, with no option to even call them over, that then cause you more problems than actual solutions. And while the boss fights were ever so slightly better than Breath of the Wild, all the other problems really push that under the rug. Like, if you're gonna solve problems, don't expect praise for it when you cause 50 more. Say you had 10 problems in Breath of the Wild. It feels like those almost quadrupled in Tears of the Kingdom. If not, became 10 times worse. And if it seems like I'm exaggerating, I'm not. Okay, I tried to 100% this stupid game. I tried. Then, all my data got deleted, but that's a story for another time. Or if you've been following me for a while, you know what happened. And it gave me a chance to, replay it from the beginning, following like a different path, going to another town first, another region first, and see like what changed. Maybe I just went about it and got the wrong power first. No. It's quite terrible, if I do say so myself. It was just so exhausting. It felt exhausting to play. Because you're going to tell me that when Breath of the Wild came out, it felt liberating because a non-gamer could play that game and figure it out. Tears of the Kingdom was also like that. Until you added in the fact that it's supposed to be a sequel to another game, so your gamer brain is supposed to already kind of be plugged in for it. So many of the problems come with the fact that there's no satisfaction from completing any of your quests, right? If you take, say, older Zelda games, or even a game as simple as, I don't know, Candy Crush, right? It's one level at a time. It's simple, easy, but when you get through a level, there's that sense of, aha, like, I did it, I completed it, I accomplished something. But if you have something like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, where it's open world, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, but at the same time, the side quests don't actually give you any rewards that help you in terms of your skill set and the way you do things. Even other RPGs do this better than Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, because I hate to gas gacha games, because I should probably make an entire separate video on those and what a money scam those are. But I've played some and they're really good at one thing in particular: leveling. The thing that lacked the most to me in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom was leveling. Now, you might be thinking, well, Belle, you know, there weren't exactly any other players to compete with, so the levels don't really matter, and you know, you could argue that the monsters didn't really need levels because maybe that's the fun in it, you take it however you want strategically, and that would be all fine and dandy if they gave us something else to work with. It's just all recycled, and not in a good way. It's like when someone says, oh yeah, by the way, you know, this plastic bottle, see, instead of just throwing it away and like recycling it and making it something new, I'm just going to kind of throw the entire bottle and just recycle the lid, you know? Because I'm still technically recycling something, but you see, the main core of the thing that you were trying to throw away, you threw it away instead of recycling it, it's gone now. The core of what made Zelda a Zelda game is kind of non-existent there. Like, we get it, you have to save the princess, but one of the things I personally was so excited about, expectant about, but honestly not surprised at being proven wrong about, was having Zelda with us. Another thing about Zelda in Tears of the Kingdom: how is it that in Breath of the Wild she could communicate with us telepathically? She had a connection to us. You could say, you know, oh, Belle, it's just timey-wimey stuff, you know, it doesn't count. And that would be fine if she didn't do a load of stuff that is really, really confusing. You're telling me that she had time to, you know, cry all those tears, but she couldn't, like, I don't know, drop one on our stupid heads, or, like, it just doesn't make sense. You see, that example was horrible of me, okay? It didn't make much sense. But take it from a perspective of, you've played this game quite a few times, and every time it just gets worse. You meet this ghost that is also basically King Roham again, just like telling you, hey, this is the tutorial area, this is what you have to do. But this time, it's different. There's no like, I'm asking you, please save my daughter. There's no emotion there. There's no like, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Rauru feels soulless. He doesn't feel like a character. In the memories in Breath of the Wild, we had things that made us realize how much of a person Zelda was. She wasn't just like this angry, angsty teenager that couldn't do what she wanted to do. She actually had issues with her father, with the responsibilities of being a princess, and with the fact that Link was right next to her, being perfect, having everything he could ever want, but at the same time he was just, he seemed soulless to her. And in a way, Tears of the Kingdom fell flat because Link was still the shell of a man that, in theory, in Breath of the Wild, he didn't know he was. But in Tears of the Kingdom, he's supposed to know who he is now. He's supposed to be regaining some of that himness. BOTW did amazingly with the loss of memories and slowly getting them back, because the memories didn't have a specific order you needed to get them in for it to make sense. But when Tears of the Kingdom is like presented to you as like this detective case, and arguably the side adventures are more entertaining than the entire main story, you kind of lose that, because we, the audience, know what's going on with Zelda. We're not discovering, yet even though we're Link, the reason Link is so emotionless technically is because we're supposed to characterize him the way we would do it in the game if we were Link. But taking that aspect of it, if we're Link and we know, how does Link not know about Zelda? Do you see my point? That's when everything starts getting convoluted and it starts hurting your head. Because what do you mean? Like, this is the first loop of Zelda going back in time and everything gets sorted. There's no like consequences for messing up the time continuum, or like Rara and Sonia meeting their great granddaughter. Especially since something that just doesn't add up is you learn in a side quest that Raru and Sonia supposedly had a child, but that child was never seen, and to be honest, at least to me, as grim as it is, wouldn't that child have been the most logical target for Ganondorf's rage if he wanted to take over Hyrule? He could have easily done it in a more strategic way. As well as the fact that Raru just coincidentally had to tell Ganondorf everything about Link. Yet, in the first time we saw Ganondorf, he already knew who we were. So obviously, that wasn't like the first time time was looped. And if Zelda went back in time, you could have had a moment of her like repairing the past to prevent the future. Instead, you got you can't change the past because it still is going to happen no matter if I'm there or not. It always happens. And you realise that Zelda being there is actually more of a problem than a solution. So what would have made more sense is future Zelda preventing past Zelda from going back to the past, because apparently she's this powerful time manipulator all of a sudden and not a light magic user anymore, even though actually she is a light magic user, but at the same time she can't use magic because the light magic because she's the Sage of Time, but she can't do that because she has to inherit Sonia's stone for plot reasons, not both the stones. This could have easily been resolved if Sonia and Raru had given Zelda the stones. If Zelda had the stones, it could have all
you're not a ghost, are you?
gone back to normal, because I thought that whole stone situation would have ended with the stones aren't the source of the power, you are, and it turns out that the stones were powerless without its holder. But suddenly we have these stones that are just like all powerful, more powerful than life itself. Yet they were never in a legend, or better yet, they say they weren't in Legends, but in reality we hear about them so much we get sick to our stomachs. Because those secret stones were never a secret from anyone. You're telling me that them going around with this huge glowing stone on their chests, on their necklaces, wasn't an indicator of the power? And then people are like, well, how did Ganondorf know that?
From an unusual creature.
It's obvious! Like, we didn't know what those stones were, and we still knew that when Zelda picked it up, she shouldn't have picked it up. Why did we as Link not stop it? Because it's obvious. That's the thing that's most infuriating. In Breath of the Wild, Link is supposed to be this, like, newborn baby in a world he doesn't know. But in Tears of the Kingdom, he's supposed to be the century-old knight. And Zelda, this millennia-old, incredibly powerful demigod thing. Because she is a demigod, because the Zonai are considered divine beings. So the mythology, everything is all skewed and messed up. And this is like taking it only from a story point of view. If you look at the mechanics of the game, oh my goodness. Again, you wanted to brand it as a sequel. Why is it that our entire skill set from the previous game is removed? Okay, the Master Sword. Losing the Master Sword, I was so angry about that. Losing all our hearts, angry about that. The stamina, angry about that. That was understandable. But you're telling me the 4 beginner shrines of Breath of the Wild, the power that we had, we kept until the very end of that story, we never had. We had the Master Sword and all the hearts that some people never earned at the end. Yet we didn't have the one thing that we all collectively got. And then we have to get 4 new powers that are eerily similar. But, you know, not Shikica things anymore. They're Zonai things. And all the shrines, all the old Breath of the Wild shrines, they coincidentally all disappear. All the towers gone. And now we all have different towers. And the reason that I'm even more annoyed is you're telling me that people suddenly lost the map of the entire kingdom. Okay, we could have started so easily with a map of the kingdom, but not a map of the depths or the skies. Yet they chose not to give us that, and instead give us this half-hearted Find the Towers mission, which was much less epic. And it just all felt like a huge slap in the face to people who had been waiting years for a sequel. This is from simply a non-biased, just, I played it, I expected more perspective. I don't dislike it. I've never claimed to dislike it. There are simply factors of it that I dislike. And I understand that probably it's been worked on for decades. They're sick of doing this. But then why rebrand it as like this like new and improved version of Breath of the Wild, when in reality it's just an erasure of years of work by your own team? It just doesn't make sense. And it makes me wonder, like, sometimes things like this just make me think, was this made by AI? Because what do you mean? Obviously it's not. But what do you mean the developers never saw this coming? You're telling me at any stage in development they didn't think for even a moment that having the things that we had in the previous game as like landmarks or something wouldn't have been better than whatever the hell they pulled with everything disappearing? Oh, Belle, development takes time and the assets probably were too heavy for the computers to handle. Yet you created 2 new maps. The Breath of the Wild main map was kind of expanded. The Sky Islands, a whole new tutorial area. We had then the whole entire depths regions that were just, oh, the depths. Those were handled horribly. There are so many problems, and if I were to discuss them all, my throat would dry up from how exhausting it is. But from the few I've presented to you, you can probably tell that me and many other Zelda players are not happy. We know that it's hard to develop games, but we also know that this franchise has been going on way before open world games were even a thing, and it just feels like they're taking the people who buy their games, who play their games, who review their games, who make an entire fandom out of their games for granted. You're telling me that they took this lovely, wonderful new idea and just thought, money, money, green, green, and just then said, yeah, so we're not doing a third one, because I think it's actually been confirmed they're not doing a third game. So I would argue that while Tears of the Kingdom was entertaining, you could have just kept it a Breath of the Wild, you know. Just my take on it. Either way, it doesn't actually change anything. This little video won't change anything. I've seen countless people talking about this. Thought I'd hop on to give my own thoughts about it, but it's been a very long time now since this came out, since it's been almost 10 years since Breath of the Wild, and that's honestly unbelievable. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope this small, short explanation of why I don't exactly enjoy Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom as much as I'd like to was entertaining for you. Because Breath of the Wild has its problems. And I'm not going to discuss the problems of Breath of the Wild because it's been out for a long time. There are countless videos on the internet repeating the same 4 things that were an issue. But with Tears of the Kingdom, the entire base of the game is just flawed. And Breath of the Wild, I enjoy it way more after Tears of the Kingdom. Like, it's so much more appreciated. And I hope other people can appreciate it more too, and perhaps it might indicate to the developers that we don't want this quick cash grab thing. We want something with heart, something that they care about. Because you could see in the books of development how much they loved what they were doing, but they couldn't show that same love for the people they were making it for. I hope you enjoyed my sweet berries and all new viewers. Thank you so much for all the support you give me every single day, especially that of my patrons. If you want to support me even further than you do, then please consider checking out my Patreon link down below. And yeah, I hope to see you next time. Goodbye! I hope you had as much fun as me today. Same time tomorrow. If you enjoyed, you might also like these.